Okay.
Thanks, Mike. Okay, call to order. Samantha Hills, regular member. Richard Maloney, regular member. Bill Rankin, regular member, are here, along with Mike D'Amato and John Guskowski. So great. First order of business is public participation. Mike, do you see anybody out there that wants to speak?
I do not.
Okay, let's go to approval of minutes. I have not put together the minutes yet. We'll have them for the next meeting. Old business, we've got Bill Rankin with a discussion of F&F Concrete and the railroad project. You're on, Bill.
Thank you, sir. Mike and I had a couple of email discussions trying to put together a meeting with Lauren Forgione, the owner of FF Concrete. Purpose of that meeting will be to introduce Mike to Lauren and then talk about some ongoing initiatives here in town with regards to aid development and planning and zoning. And then finally, Mike would introduce a development person who has an interest in putting some discussions together with Lauren with regards to the property and how she'll be using it strategically for her own business activities. And it is believed he has some interested parties that would look at using some of that property that she's not using for their business. So I think it's a meeting that has not happened. Lauren is on vacation this week. We were trying to fit it in the end of last week, but being a businessman myself, I know that's almost impossible to get away without working 18 hours a day the last couple of days. And unfortunately, I'm going to be out of town for the next 2 weeks. So let me throw this out, Mike. Do you want me to put you together with Lauren and have the meeting without me? Or do you want to hold off for another 2 weeks and see if we can schedule it the beginning of May?
I think it would be better to wait because I think I'll have more information to share by that time.
Okay.
I think it'd probably be a more productive meeting, or hopefully by then.
I can tell you, I know you said that she sat in on a meeting at the town hall with Phil Desiato, and I asked her, she said, we didn't have a chance to meet, but I was impressed by Michael. So you're walking in with a good attitude, I should say a good reference already. So how's that sound?
That's good. That'll go up on my bulletin board by itself in the pro category.
Put a check mark next to it.
That's right.
I've had when was it? A week ago, 2 weeks ago, Thursday, or a week ago this past Thursday, I was with the D&W folks down in New York City at a traffic club meeting. And Ed's boss was aware of what we're doing here. And he said they'd be very interested in assisting in the marketing of the facility outside of the land use that she has, but they're also talking to some of her current suppliers down there about bringing rail in for her current needs here in town. So let's put it this way, there's a lot of creative juices that are going on right now, so it's starting to gain some momentum. I'm also taking it to the ranks of the Union Pacific Railroad out in Omaha, as well as the CN execs up in Montreal with regards to the availability of some industrial property for development on rail. And let me tell you, before all these commerce and supply chains, how can I say it, some of the difficulties that are being reported, land use or industrial development land on rail was rare. So there's a lot of interest right now in this type of development. I'm done.
Thanks, Bill. I think that's great. Okay, so next on the agenda, we have the American Recovery Plan Act. Commission has met a few times. Samantha was instrumental, along with Michael, pushing forward our request and proposal, which was approved for $300,000 of funds for small businesses. So the question for the group tonight is, how do we execute this son of a gun?
Well, my feeling is we need to make sure we dot all the i's and cross all the t's with regards to the application procedure, et cetera, because it's getting some bad publicity right now.
Yeah, I
Some
think
of the
that's
towns.
Oh, in other towns, okay.
Yeah,
Nothing you've heard from Willington. Okay, that's good.
nothing
Yeah.
here. I think
Right.
that's fair. You know, I think we've put together a pretty solid proposal with a good application. You know, the question would be is who would handle the application? How would we approve the applicants? And what would be the limit of each dollar amount?
So,
Correct me if I'm wrong, I thought there was a limit of 15,000, wasn't it?
yeah, so it's basically when we get through with the application process, it'll basically be a yes or a no. It'll be, are they eligible? Do they meet the requirements? And if the answer is yes, then it'll be basically a flat grant. That was one of the things that was very important to the ARPA Commission, is that it not be sort of this fluctuating scale. I think, you know, that we can probably be the ones that do the reviewing. We'll just have to come up with some scoring criteria. And I don't know if we want to have other people assist in that.
So Mike, that would be the commission. Is that what you're thinking is the EDC commission?
Yeah, I
Yes.
think that would make sense since they requested it.
That sounds good. So we'd have to queue these up. Can you,
say
yeah, go ahead,
something?
Samantha. You go right ahead. Yep.
I wanted to say something because actually another criterion that they asked for and they brought up and I thought was a very good idea was actually 2 different tiers, because somebody had mentioned, Robin, I believe, that there may be some small businesses that can't show a huge loss of up to $15,000, but they may just like fall under, say, an amount that we were going to give in terms of their revenue loss or, you know, their loss due to COVID. And I thought that was a pretty decent proposal. I mean, we have someone, the only request that I've seen so far that went directly to ARPA that was from a business is from a landlord, a property owner in town, and just how the system sort of worked against her, even though most of the time she would have received, you know, money from the state, but it required some cooperation on the part of the tenant that didn't happen. So, you know, that's a larger request. I mean, but not everyone's going to need that. So that is something that we should consider. I think in terms of a rubric, we can go with the way that East Windsor had done it, you know, because that's the answer that seemed to satisfy everyone once Mike started saying that like it had been done, because nothing had really changed, but they stopped all the questioning. Really nothing much had changed from the questionings that they gave me. So a lot of it was presentation. Mike, you're a good presenter. There could be some mild sexism involved in that as well, but that's for another day.
I think it's just that they want me to stop talking, so they just agree. So I mute
No,
myself.
I do think that there is people do, and I mean, I'm not the greatest speaker in terms of stuff like that because I'm just kind of too raw with the way I present everything. But in any case, we got to come up with a rubric. That will be somewhat satisfying. They have entrusted us, which I think is great. They didn't ask to see the rubric in advance. We should consider the 2 tiers. And then the other thing that they asked for was a shorter timeline. I don't even honestly remember what we said. I think we now said like, what do we say, Mike? Like two months. So we want to make sure that we have our advertising stuff, like how we're going to promote it, set in place before we set that deadline, because we don't want to deny anyone an opportunity. And I'm only concerned that we meet once a month And, it seems like I've never actually met with any of you outside of this meeting. And one of the things that I was pushing for was like, these businesses need this money yesterday, right? I kept saying that. I kept kind of coming against the way that they had handled it. And I don't want to be guilty of the very thing that I accused them of. I feel like, although I do think now it's kind of like, it's just going to come in handy. I don't think it's actually going to save anyone at this point and keep their business open because it's too late for that. So those are my thoughts.
I don't think on all of those thoughts, I disagree with any of them. So I think a tiered approach is fine. Mike, is that reasonable? Like a $7,500 award and then a $15,000 award? How do we structure this?
I think that having two grant sizes is okay. I think the key is going to be making sure that we come up with clear criteria so that people fall into very squarely one and not the other. But I know, so John and I had talked about this earlier today, kind of getting ready for the meeting, and we are happy to take on sort of flipping the model from East Windsor and coming up with something that we think will work. And then our thought was that we would share it with the group via email so you could send us comments so that we don't have to wait until the May meeting to build any type of consensus. Because otherwise, yeah, it'll be August by the time we actually get all this stuff, kind of pushed through.
Yeah, I think that's good. Is it confusing though? Is it too confusing to have two grant sizes? Should we just do one grant and then run through the program and see if all the funds are expended? And then if they're, not expended, can we go back and then, re-award per se? I'm just fearful that.
Here's what I think the question for that.
Yeah.
All right. I think that the answer to that question lies in the amounts. So when she was talking, I was really thinking of a much smaller grant. So if we're going to structure this so that, let's say we did the 7,515, would they have to show a minimum of $7,500 in revenue loss to receive that grant? So I think that's the main question. If that's not true, if they don't have to show a revenue loss greater than the grant amount, then the two tiers don't even make as much sense. I think that she was saying that because their first way that they were approaching was they didn't want to just give money to people that couldn't demonstrate a loss. They didn't want people to just get free money, basically. So I think that's the question. And I thought that they would be more drastic, that the tiers would be a lot more obvious, I think, it was something I was thinking even smaller, not half and then 15. I was thinking like 2,500 and 10,000. I was thinking any loss greater than 2,500 would hit the next amount, I guess.
Well, what if we did just one award of $5,000? And the loss, as I understand it, a read of the act is you just give us a narrative. I mean, you don't have to. It's not an accounting or a formula. For example, I'm a consultant for the restaurants industry. I'm going to tell you that the restaurant industry got destroyed. So that's kind of what you're going to say on this grant application.
There's no supporting paperwork?
There's no documentation or supporting paperwork. That's correct. You don't have to show a precipitous drop in revenue in order to qualify for the award. That's how I believe it went in East Windsor. Is that correct, Mike?
I would have to look. I'll be there tomorrow, but I'm just trying to pull up the
final rule.
Our submission,
okay.
Because I think
We
did
I
say
think
that.
we didn't
We
necessarily.
said that they need
focus
to
on-
demonstrate it.
That's right.
I think we talked about that, but then we were also focused on making investments to make the business more resilient in the future, and that this was more than just filling a hole that had been dug, but it's more of making investments. Is making upgrades, making creative expenditure of these funds so that businesses would be better able to thrive.
So it says that the purpose and intent of the program is to invest some of the town's Willington ARPA, but to assist small businesses and nonprofit community in the recovery from negative impacts of COVID-19, as well as to increase their vitality, competitiveness, and resiliency for future growth, totaling $300,000 with individual grant awards not to exceed $15,000.
Yes, I understand that. We did submit that, but you and I both were in the meetings when it got discussed. And I'm not saying it's significantly changed, but I don't think it's terrible to ask people to demonstrate in some way that they had some loss personally, but
And the problem with
because
that, though, is
they were asking us those types of questions. Now, I don't
Right.
think it needs to be, we don't need to go through a total econometric statistical analysis. And that's what I was pushing with, saying like, you guys we're not forcing you to demonstrate it down to the dot and tittle. Like, we're not going that far, but there should be something. I feel that there's, they have to file taxes. So I don't understand why that would be hard to get an overall tax statement saying something like that. Or maybe that's too private. I don't know. Maybe they could just say we had a lot like this much, and then we had a loss, because there are certain industries, like I work for the florist. Now, they were eligible for a PPP loan, but her business went up. There was an increase, a year-to-year increase, because that industry actually did not suffer. There more people wanted flowers because they couldn't go shopping.
right. And the statement that we're going to ask is, did your business, suffer or have a significant loss of revenue?
Okay. Right.
So they're going to answer yes or no to that question. We're not going to ask
Right.
for, documentation of that. So obviously a package store cannot come at us and say, oh, we had a significant loss. That didn't
Right,
happen.
right.
So
Right.
we'll be able to see it. It'll be self-evident.
Well,
And then the resiliency.
As long as I guess they're writing a statement and we're taking it as a statement of faith, they did not ask us. Mike, I want your thoughts on it, because I just, I like to be a person of my word, and I don't want to have taken anything that they said. And they did end up approving it, but we did say a demonstrated loss. I guess it's up to us to decide how it's demonstrated. And if they make a statement, then that we're calling that, valid.
So
Well, Would the application process itself require them to provide some verbiage and demonstrate how there either was a loss in revenue or a loss in income associated with the pandemic?
It's their statement is considered the demonstration, them saying it. It's kind of a statement of good faith, honestly, because we're not asking them for their financials.
Understand? Yeah, Rich just said, the liquor stores, their business flourished during this, and
Right.
when the application
Right.
is there and they demonstrate why they feel this would help them, whether or not to make up for what they lost, or the vision of being able to grow their business and avoid this type of situation. We should be able to read through that, whether or not it's would pass the test or not.
So a couple of my takeaway from sort of the presentation was they want us to have very clear and established criteria before we make the money available. They don't think that big corporations that just happen to have roots in Willington, like a FedEx or a Dunkin' Donuts or a Dollar General, ought to be eligible, which I think we all agree. And we explained that the way that the program works, the way it worked in East Windsor, is that they have a statement in their grant agreement which says that if you falsified any of this information and the IRS asks, we're going to hand them your phone number. We are just a pass-through entity of these funds. You are responsible. But one of the things that I thought about, and I don't think we need to decide this now, the commission can think about it, is that maybe we approach a member of the ARPA commission to review the applications with us. And be sort of like a, you know, another person who was involved in the process to just go through and do the scoring. You know, can't hurt to have another set of eyes, but I think it'll also create some buy-in.
Trust. Yeah, some trust issues. Yeah. I mean, I'm for that. The only issue I have with it, and I think that's a very good idea, but I think that we agreed to 60 days. Tell me if I'm wrong, but that we would receive the applications for 60 days, and after 60 days is when we would, you know, give them funding. That there was some kind, there was like a limit on, right? So just the way that things have moved with even ARPA, you know, it's like, how are we as a commission going to hear these requests? They're going to submit them to us. Are we going to wait? You said you're going to email us about some details of the plan. Okay, that's fine. But then what happens when we get a submission? Are we going to call a special meeting? Are we going to hear them month to month? I mean, I think we're going to need to call a special meeting because we only meet once a month. And if we give them 60 days, we can't take up the next 2 meetings. And I'm sorry if you feel like I'm being, you know, whatever, but these are the logistics. These are real issues of getting this money into people's hands.
So I think that we would leave the application process open for a set period of time. When the application process closed, we would review everything, score everything, and award at one time. Because if we get into this rolling scenario, we're going to run into the same issue that ARPA ran into, where you don't want to be sending money out the door before you know when the last request is going to come in.
Exactly.
So
I do agree with that, but do you think that we need to have a special meeting where we can discuss all, we don't know how many requests we're going to get, really. We don't know. And we definitely need an action plan on advertising, which I was kind of hoping that we would be able to, oh, you guys are going to work on that, you said?
I mean,
Because I was hoping we could pin something like that down, honestly. I think we need an email campaign. I think we should maybe, I mean, if we really want a broad reach, we could put a sign up. I don't know if we can on the town green or.
I mean, what we could do is we could have everything, we could try to get it wrapped up sort of if we need to meet or via email or whatever between now and the May meeting, make the thing live on the May meeting, have the first deadline be the June meeting, and commit, basically say we're going to do a review at the June meeting, but we'll only commit half the funds so that we can leave it open for an additional 30 days and we won't get to a point where we've committed more funds than we should, you know, so that people that submit
similar to
quickly,
what we did with ARPA.
yeah,
I mean, because
think
we'd heard the first, we did hear requests before we got them all in. Okay, I mean, that's, yeah.
I don't think we're going to be dealing with 40
I
applications.
know, a million requests, I know.
Um,
So
So-
can you do as part of your, what you guys are working on, along with the rubric, kind of an advertising methods campaign, like how we would do that?
Yeah, I mean, we can,
We should put something on the website, put something on the Facebook page. And can we, should we, or could we approach the town and see if they would send out a notice that we might make?
I mean, we can certainly coordinate that mailing. It would just be, where would we get the money to pay for it? We'd have to look to see where we could pull that from. but-
Mailing, I'm not even talking about a mailing. Did I say mail?
Well, so you just wanted to go via email?
Yeah, email, everyone's on a list, or no, I'm asking, you know how the town sends out emails, you know, for whatever, town of Willington emails. I mean, the only problem I see with that is that not every person gets the email, but I'm pretty sure that most businesses would be interested in those emails. So anyone that's signed up for town emails, could we put that out? But I guess not, unless they specifically signed up for it. I don't know the rules around that.
I mean, we have a business list that we did during COVID, which has addresses and email addresses. I can get an extract from the assessor if we wanted to do direct mailings. We could do, I mean, we could do some targeted stuff on Facebook. It's not, so I think that Willington's a small enough town that once it is out there, I think we'll be okay. But John and I will focus on trying to get this stuff pulled together so that we can get some comments, and then we can start thinking about how to advertise it once we're all in agreement on what it looks like.
Yes, all right, and I want you to know that, I mean, I can participate in that, like, I don't know, I did something once with like Giving Tuesday or something like that for one of the nonprofits that I was working for. And like, they would give you sort of a preset message, like post this 3 times a day on Facebook or something like that. So that's, I guess, what I'm looking for, sort of a pre-written paragraph to just, you know, be able to copy and paste, put the name of whatever in there, maybe change a few details. So like 2 or 3 different messages that then could go out, you know, on friends and neighbors and just different places. That's all. That's it. And which it gives the information that's needed. So then, and I would be happy to be responsible for posting them and monitoring the inbox if we get it and describing how to go about it to them. But just like having that would be helpful. How does that sound?
Sure,
Does that sound like something you guys can do?
I think we can
Okay.
pull it together.
Thank you.
All right, so that sounds good. So what we'll do is Mike and John are gonna create the final application. They'll email it around to the group. They'll also give us the suggested marketing campaign, which is on the Facebook page, on our website, and the Willington email list. And they'll get that also to us via email, of which we can go ahead via email and say, approved, you go right ahead. And then in the May meeting, we will make that live, or do you want to make it live before then?
I think, I mean, if we have everything ready to go and we're ready to do it, I don't think we necessarily need to wait, but if not, I think we should shoot for the latest to be the May meeting.
That sounds good. I would prefer not to wait. I think we really have the skeleton of this program pretty well, you know, drafted. I think we know what we're doing. It's been vetted by this commission and the ARPA commission. I mean, we're ready to go. Why don't we go ahead and empower you and John to do that, Mike? That's fine.
All right, we'll get started.
Great. Thank you so much. Any other questions?
One question about did you pick the brains of the people over at East Windsor? Is that what I understand?
East Windsor is another one of my towns. So
All right.
they did this, yeah, but I don't know, almost a year ago.
And when there was a requirement, or is it, I mean, is it for entities, profit, nonprofit, that file a 1099, or how is that set up on the application?
So I'm trying to pull it up. I know I have it. I just can't put my hands on it this minute. The difference.
Don't worry. We'll see
is,
when you get it, Mike. Don't worry about that.
The thing that they had to be concerned with in a different way is that they have a large number of commercial businesses, some of which are very large. So they wanted their criteria was different. But that's what we're going to model it off of.
Yep. You know, we have a couple walls that are built, and that's one is that we got $300,000 to yeah, I won't say play with, handout or qualify, and then getting the timing down with regards to the application and then the review process. As another wall we have to build, and I think we've addressed that. But the key is that we've got to make sure that it's visible enough so someone can't come in and say, I don't care about your guidelines, I didn't hear about it. That's important. And then last is, if we've got 40 applicants, just hypothetically speaking, are we going to take 40 and divide 300,000 by 40, or are we going to make decisions on it's a genuine application or it's not? Those are the sticking points, you know.
Yep, I agree.
Well, good. That
think those
sounds
are
fine.
great
And
points.
then finally, from
Bill,
a
I
marketing
think-
standpoint. Go ahead.
What was the last thing you said? From a what?
From a marketing standpoint, I think we're going to end up with a list of people in town that we can ask for assistance in growing the economic development.
That's true too. I
Yeah,
think
that's a
that
great
most
suggestion.
people, small businesses, they've been I think they would be aware of this program already. I think a lot of them, to address the question you asked about the criterion, they definitely need to be registered with the Secretary of the State. They need to be an established business that's registered with a home in Willington and have, I think it's fewer than 100 employees, but I cannot remember. So it has to qualify as a small business. So we're not talking about the TA or something like that. And the question about whether we're going to do the 300,000, I think we have kind of yet that to decide. That is why we asked for the award. And originally the thing of saying between 5 and 15 was based on how many applicants we get. So I think that's a great question. And I don't know how we're going to answer that. I don't know with Mike drawing out some of the rubric of whether they qualify or not. I think that is a good idea to see how many requests, but it doesn't work with the timeline that was just mentioned. So I do think it's a situation similar to with the way that we handled ARPA to begin with was, well, let's kind of feel out what types of requests we get. Like, we really don't know. Are they all going to be smaller? Are they going to, so I don't know. I think we could go either way though and remain in good standing with ARPA. We could say we want to spend all 300,000 and divide it by the number of requests that we get, but then we wouldn't be able to do the half and half thing that Mike had mentioned and remain fair. And Matt sat in on a meeting too. So we're kind of talking about the logistics of how to go forward with receiving the requests and make advertising campaign as well.
Right. Apologize for being late. I couldn't get away, so I'm here. So I'm not quite sure that I would do it so that we have a $300,000 to split evenly between all applicants, because we might end up with very few applicants, in which case, that wouldn't work very well. That's my input. So I think it needs to be a set amount. And we can do that. There's several different ways you can do that. You can just set a dollar amount, or you can do it as, a percentage of sales. So those are the two ways that come to my mind.
I think to set an upper limit maximum amount would be a smart idea.
Yeah, we have that set with the grant already at 15.
Yep.
That's right. And we can have them apply, and we don't have to make that decision tonight, because we'll see the totality of the applicants. Because as Samantha says, we don't really know what it is yet. So once we get that application, all those applications in the inbox, we'll take a look at them and then make those decisions.
I agree. The more applicants you get, the more success the project will have.
So I think, and I came in when we were talking about Samantha. I think you were saying that you thought that most people would be aware of it. There's several different ways we can outreach. One of them is to have that to have it posted, and the other one is a notice, a legal notice, and the third one is we can have it put into Willington Wire and mentioned at board meetings and things like that.
That's right, Matt. Mike's going to come up with the marketing plan. We're going to put it on the Facebook page, put it on our website, and then send out the email to all the businesses. Yeah, so that's good. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Any more comments on the American Rescue Plan Act?
Good discussion.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, new business. Under new business, we have cannabis establishments. Planning and zoning have had a couple of discussions. Obviously, as you know, we've had a moratorium on cannabis establishments in the town that was enacted by planning and zoning. And now they're going to go about drafting the regulations for these businesses. So, we could advocate for the regulations or say no to the regulations. We don't have a real big role in this other than to say we wholly support it or we don't support it. So I'd like to discuss it. Samantha, I see you with your hand up.
Well, I took my hand down, so I don't know why my hand is still up. But as far as these businesses, this is such a mixed bag because, you know, I'm so libertarian and believing that everybody's going to do what they want to do anyway. But at the same time, it's like, would I want a porn shop to come into my town? Would I want a strip bar to come into my town? And I'm not sure that I want a bunch of cannabis situation in the town. So I think some regulation, what types of regulations would they be? Are we talking about not being able to grow? Are we talking about hours that they were allowed to be open? You know, whether they can sell CBD or just medicinal, and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And I know that it's like, it's pot. It's not like it's heroin, but I don't care. It's just, you know, I'm not sure. Will that bring, I mean, we could get a lot of the Yukon dollars that way. They come up, get their little weed pens and leave. But we don't want anyone else.
Well, it's
So-
a concern. I mean, you know, I know that in drafting the regulations, you know, the staff, Mike and John, have looked at this and said, you know, probably we don't want it in the South Willington Village District. That probably is not where you want to put this. So I think in your regulations, you can put, you know, you can put these establishments where you want to put them. And do we want retailers in town? I mean, I don't know the answer to that question. Or do you want, you know, cultivators in town? I mean, perhaps that's a better use of our resources insofar as we have a little bit bigger and better spaces for warehouses. So, you know, these are the discussions that the Planning and Zoning Commission is going to have, and that the, you know, the townspeople are going to be able to weigh in on. Maybe Mike can give us a little overview of when this will happen.
So we're talking about the regs now, probably have a hearing on the draft language late May. The state law that's currently in place would only allow for one retail and one cultivator in Willington because we have less than 25,000 people. So they will not issue more than one license for those two operations, regardless of if we allow them anywhere we want. The other thing is that, yeah, I mean, we can regulate all of those things. We can regulate location, signage, hours of operation, all of those things. And for the retail side, 3% of all the revenues generated by the retail sales is transmitted back to the host community. So if you locate one in your town, you know, they used mass estimates because Massachusetts was ahead of us to get a general sense. They estimate that the annual sales is about $4 to $5 million per store on average statewide. So maybe it's $200,000 or something that the town would end up getting every year. I think the commission is moving in the direction of adopting something, but not just a across the board allowance.
Great, thank you, Mike. Okay, I'm not sure that
One
we're going
question,
to
Rich.
endorse or
Well, I'm
not.
taking my
Yeah,
position.
yeah.
1 and 1 is good. I personally think the cult smarter move. Whoops, is a smarter move for us. And based on what you said, maybe a retail establishment, because like I said, Yukon dollars, and we're getting 3%. That does seem pretty good, but as long as it is limited like that to one, I think that it wouldn't be terrible. And it will probably end up getting set up over by like where the tattoo parlor used to be anyway. So doesn't it, that would make the most sense. Maybe I should open it. I don't know. I'm sorry.
Well, I think that for the
I've been looking for a
cultivation,
job.
cultivation application fee for the state is $3 million. So Uh,
Oh, so you got to be rich
Wow.
to get in. I thought they were waiving that because they were working with their racial equity thing or something like that. That was a big. I was a participant back when I did work as a policy analyst. I went to some big marijuana thing at the Capitol talking about that, and I thought they were waiving that. Or is that just if you are like a racial, like if you're
There's
um,
a social equity council that's impaneled in Hartford, and they're going to take social equity applicants. So they're going to split up the licenses between regular businesses and social equity applicants. For example, retail licenses, 2 go to the social equity applicant and 2 go to the regular business. So there will be micro cultivators also, which are able to actually deliver to customers as well as grow 2,000 square feet up to 15,000 square feet for micro cultivators. Yeah.
So there'll be a factory outlet you're talking
yeah.
Yeah,
Rick
that's
sounds
right.
like my business partner right now. He knows all the deets. We
Do
can put
do we as
Fran
a commission
on
need,
delivering.
do we as a commission have to take a position on this?
We don't, Bill. No, it's just, you know, it's of interest and, you know, I don't think I wouldn't, well, I mean, you know, should we encourage it in the South Willington Village District or where do they put them? It's not really our call. I mean, that's going to be the Planning and Zoning Commission. And I think the Planning and Zoning Commission, from what I've heard, really wants to hear from the townspeople. You know, let's figure out what they really want to do, you know, before we finalize any kind of a business plan for these establishments. So I think that's where we're headed.
I know a cultivator requires an awful lot of water and it requires an awful lot of power for the lights.
So
And
Willington might not be appropriate. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not an easy process. What did you say the license costs were, Mike?
For the full cultivation license, I think once you get your conditional approval and you move forward through the process with the state, I think it's $3 million.
Wow.
Yeah, the 3 million is for the social equity applicant. They opened up an application for social equity applicants to apply for a cultivation license and give them the $3 million licensing fee without having to go through the lottery. So now they're setting up these lottery processes where they allow, there is not a cultivation license within the lottery process. It's only for social equity applicants with the $3 million. So, and there's no cap or limit on the number of those that they'll issue. So there could be several of those. Or there will be these smaller micro cultivators that there's 2 of those for businesses and 2 for social equity applicants that will be available. The application processes are ending beginning of May until the beginning of June, and then they've got to figure out how to go through the lottery. So that's kind of where we are.
We know how many of these things, how many licenses they're giving out?
Yes. For example, for a retailer, they're giving 2 to the social equity applicants, and then they're giving 2 to the business applicants. It's a little tricky, Matt, because there's also called a social joint venture where the existing dispensaries and the existing cultivators can join with social equity applicants, and they can build out dispensaries and cultivation facilities. Yes.
Here's why I'm asking. I mean, does that mean 2 for the state of Connecticut, or does that mean 2 for the town of Willington?
The whole state.
So basically, all the towns are going to be competing for these things because you get 3% of revenue. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, the towns will, well, yes and no. I mean, lots of towns have put in place moratoriums. Those are lapsing now, and they're going to have to develop regulations. You know, and remember, it's typical, similar to the adult industry where they can place them in particular places in town. You know, do they put them in the industrial parks because they're required to regulate them, or do they continue with a moratorium? And Mike can kind of speak to the zoning aspect of that and how long this moratorium will last?
Yeah, most of the moratoriums are coming expired now. The reason for the moratorium is because the law basically says if the towns do not adopt regulations to allow or prohibit them, if you receive an application, you have to treat it like a similar use. Zoning regulations are permissive, so that basically means if we don't list the use, it's deemed prohibited. And so to get around that, the state said you have to develop regs or say you prohibit it, and if not, you've got to treat it like similar use. So that would be, how do you deal with liquor sales or something along those lines? So that's why the moratoriums were in place. I think it was somewhere around 30% of the towns were moving in the direction of considering a prohibition. There's a number of towns which seem to be overwhelmingly supportive of it, because these people are going to, either they have a prescription or they have a medical need for it, and they're going to have to go to another town to spend that money. So I think that planning and zoning is trying to figure out, where Willington really stands on this. We haven't heard from anybody yet.
They're looking for input, so I'll share my personal opinion is that I would be in support of Willington having a place that grows, or a business that grows cannabis. I wouldn't be in favor at all of sales of cannabis in Willington. I don't think it's a good idea. So Mike, in terms of the 3% that goes to the town, is that for growers? And no, it's just for retail?
It's just 3% of the sales.
Of retail sales?
Correct. Yep.
So B2B sales doesn't qualify?
No.
All right, that sounds good. I know that Ralph is out there. Ralph, I didn't know if you had any comments on this issue before we go into present to speak.
Well, you know me, I have comments on almost anything. Actually, I had raised my hand earlier about something Samantha said about being for ARPA being registered with the Secretary of State. I'm registered with the town clerk as a sole proprietor, but not with the Secretary of State. So if you're looking at trying to throw some ARPA funds at small businesses, you might want to reconsider that requirement as far as being regulated by the or being registered with the Secretary of State. As far as the cannabis goes, what are we going to have? One store in town? I don't know. I'm kind of ambivalent about it. I don't see it as a big deal, and our proximity to Yukon kind of might be helpful, might not. You don't know. We're also on the main route to Sturbridge, where there's Sturbridge area, where there's 2 retail outlets. Are we going to compete with them, or are we going to intercept the traffic that's heading into Massachusetts? I don't know.
Yeah, thank you. It should be an interesting public meeting.
Oh, I'm sure it will be.
Yeah. All right. Any more questions on cannabis? Hearing none, we have on the agenda outreach. I think Mike is going to put together the outreach program for the ARPA grant. And he's gonna send that around to us. I mean, it'll be on Facebook, it'll be on our website, it'll be the email list for the town, and we'll be looking at that over the next couple of weeks. I don't think there's any reports. Michael, you don't have a report, do you?
One of the things that I was thinking about that might be interesting to explore. A couple of people have asked here and there and brought up sporadically, Willington ought to consider a blight ordinance. And that's not what I'm about to suggest, but something that I am sort of interested in thinking more about is some towns offer like little mini bite-sized tax abatements for people who make improvements to structures which increase the value of their residential property. So if you make changes to the property and it increases the value by $60,000, then they give you a tax break for a couple of years just as an incentive. And that's sort of a carrot version of property maintenance versus the stick version of blight. And so I had been looking through some other towns, and not necessarily saying it's a good idea, but it could be a way to encourage sort of property stewardship in a way that doesn't cost the town anything. But other than that, I don't have anything else to report at this point. Hopefully more next month.
Good idea. You know, that auto part, the place there on 74 and 32. I mean, the guy arrives and he dumps all his stuff there on the outside and then he leaves. You know, it's just, and you're left with a conundrum. I mean, how do you get in there and clean this premises out? I don't know if a blight ordinance would have even really helped you in that regard.
So you're talking about what is it, Dave Stewart's property?
Yes.
Yeah, so that one, we're working on a motion for contempt in court. So that one we're going to take care of through zoning. And we'll work with the judge to get an order to do that. But, you know, blight is a very, very effective tool, having enforced it in a number of towns. You can get a lot done, but the town has to be willing to spend money, because the blight code is set up. The town comes in and remediates, you lien the property, but it could be 20 years before you get it back. So you've solved the problem, but you have to have a bucket of money that you're willing to spend to pay someone to clean those things out. And, you know, Willington doesn't strike me as a town that wants to commit $20,000 a year to rent, you know, blight remediation. So trying to think of another way to encourage people.
Yeah, it's good. Let's put it on the agenda for the next meeting. I mean, maybe we can develop an abatement program that provides relief for those that do want to improve. Yeah, okay, might be a good way to go about it. Thank you, Mike.
Sure.
Just a comment on that. Many years ago, I don't know if this is related or not. I thought it was small town. I thought it was steep grants, but I could be wrong. But I remember that, you know, one of my neighbors got like a new garage and they didn't pay for it. And I don't know if it was structured similarly to that, but there was some grant money involved to do improvements, you know, to your home. Cause I feel like that is very nice, but I look at like my house, to be honest with you, my house needs to be painted and we need a new driveway and we need the bushes gone, but we just don't have money to do it. So even if you gave me a carrot, in fact, that just hurts me thinking like, darn, man, I could take advantage of that money if I only had it. I feel like a lot of people want to improve their properties, but they just don't have the means to do it. So maybe one of those, I don't know if they do that program anymore, but what happened, I was told, was that nobody applied because they didn't know about them. And then the money got taken away.
Steep is more like, I think it's more of a revolving loan. So there's a small amount of money. The town commits it to projects that meet the criteria, the projects happen, and then there's a payback. And when the fund is replenished, it goes back out the door again. So they could have money and then there could be a period of time where they don't because it's getting paid back or the houses haven't sold or whatever.
It may not have been deep. I thought it was. Christina might know, or something. I didn't know if someone here knew.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting discussion. I mean, you know, are there other ways to do it? Could you get a volunteer group that could go in and kind of assist, you know? I mean, if you wanted a little bit of help cleaning up your yard and getting to the dump, could you kind of go in and triage it? But you know, we've, as a town of Willington, we've always kind of tried to help each other, try to help each neighbor as you could. But yeah, it's worthy of a discussion. Yeah, thank you, Mike. Okay, anything else?
That's all I have.
Okay, looks like that's it. So I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
I hear Bill Rankin seconded. Oh, Matt seconded. I'm sorry. Okay, thank you. Okay, good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Right.
Good night.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.
Thanks, guys.